Don't forget, you can reach the latest episode of Potomac Watch anytime. Just ask your smart speaker, Play the Opinion Potomac Watch Podcast. That is, Play the Opinion Potomac Watch Podcast.
From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is Potomac Watch.
Welcome back. I'm Paul Gigot with Potomac Watch here, and I'm with my colleagues Bill McGurn, Colin Levy, and Monet Ukwe-Barua. And Monet, I want to pursue this issue of identity politics and the debate over it a little bit more. Democrats, of course, play up identity because it's part of their underlying philosophy, but also they think it's to their political advantage, right? They think they have an advantage with minority and voters and women voters, and they play that up with their candidates and many of their themes. They like that political ground to fight on, in other words. So my question is that smart for Trump to play on that same ground? Or would they be better off focusing on what are Harris's other vulnerabilities, which are her left-wing positions on a whole host of issues?
Yeah, I think that Trump, in attacking Harris's identity, made an error that he makes often, which is taking an approach to campaigning that is going to fire up some people who already support him and already dislike his enemies, as opposed to talking in a way that's going to appeal to those moderate swing voters who he really needs in order to be able to cross the finish line and win in November. I think that he understood that there are certain people who are going to have doubts about Harris's authenticity as a black woman and a black politician, and he figured that he would inject a rumor into the discourse that would help to stoke those doubts and that he could peel off certain black voters. But any black voter who's going to go for that approach is probably already someone who's warmed to Trump in the first place, not the people he has to be focused on appealing to, whereas he's actually going to be alienating more moderate voters who hear those kinds of things and wonder why he's talking about her race at all. And I think it's worth pointing out that Harris's response was actually savvy in the sense that she didn't come back thundering, yes, I'm a black woman, I've always been, this is my community. She said, this is a distraction and
divisive.
Exactly. And Trump is acting in a divisive way. So she actually managed to claim the high ground in the center in a way that Democrats often fail to do on race. But I do think that, as you say, Trump really should be focused on attacking her qualities as a leader and attacking her connection to the Biden record. And that's really what's going to appeal to most voters and not risk alienating a huge share of the American population. So
what I hear you saying, Monet, is that there was some clear political calculation on the part of Trump, and he's trying to cast doubt about Harris's authenticity, and that might resonate among some minority voters. But that on net, the way he did this is probably a net negative for him. Is that fair?
I think that's exactly right. You'll see a lot of black voters who, it has to be pointed out that the blacks often talk about authenticity and does this person actually represent our community and values? And there are going to be people weighing Kamala Harris's record because Trump has now injected that into the conversation. But I do think that he's going to turn off a lot of people with his comments too. And this isn't the issue that he wants to stay on after this if he wants to present himself as someone who can unify the country and be a capable leader.
Well, unifying the country may have gone out the window. Colin, another bit here is, one of the things you followed as ideas Trump tried to bring up in this exchange with the journalists is he tried to stress his economic performance, right? He said, look, in his Trumpian way, he said, I've been the best president for black Americans since Abraham Lincoln, which just a touch of hyperbole there. But he tried to say, look, my policies worked for you and Harris's would not. And they're trying to make those contrasts with Harris's policies in advertising campaigns that just begun, one on immigration. They're going to make that argument with others. But Trump sat on that message here by talking about identity in a way that may overwhelm what they're trying to do on advertising. Karl Rove makes this point that in a short campaign, as this is now, under 100 days, you need to reinforce that message you're bringing every day. Otherwise, the average voter might not hear it.
I completely agree with that. I think the policy argument, especially the economic policy argument, rising tide lifts all boats, is for sure the best argument to be making to black voters who care a lot about prosperity and jobs and all the things that many American voters care about. Politically, I think, Paul, what was really stuck out to me about it was it just gave the impression that his campaign is sort of luffing in the wind, and he's out there just spouting whatever pops into his head. It seemed undisciplined because, it redirects the conversation in a way that he shouldn't necessarily want it going. And I think that was what I took away from it. And also, he seemed at moments during the convention, to mention just briefly, a bit on the defensive about his vice presidential choice in J.D. Vance. He was asked point blank at one point whether or not he thought Vance was prepared to take over on day one. And he kind of deflected on that. He gave a fairly mild defense of J.D. and said he's a family guy and, he's so impressed with his story. But there was a moment there where you saw in him an acknowledgement that his campaign isn't on its strongest foot and certainly isn't where it was at the convention a few weeks ago where they were doing victory laps.
Yeah, Bill, 10 days ago, they roared out of this, or 11 days ago, roared out of the Republican convention in Milwaukee with an enormous sense of optimism. Then Biden left the race. Harris consolidated the nomination very quickly. And for the last 11 days or so, Trump has seemed to be somewhat on the back foot. And if you look at the polling, Harris is caught up. Certainly, in a couple of polls, she's ahead of Donald Trump now in national polling, even in some of the swing state polls. Now, obviously, those aren't definitive. We're still a long way out. But do you get the sense that the Trump campaign hasn't figured out how they can go after Kamala Harris?
Well, I think that's part of it. Remember, the whole press corps has stopped holding Democrats accountable. No tough questions to Kamala, no asking why she hasn't had a press conference. And I think they're going to try to run out the clock to the election. So I don't think what you described is going to change until the debate. That's the only chance Trump has to break through this. I don't think his messages, his ads and so forth, I don't think they'll really reach voters he needs to reach until the debates and people see what Kamala Harris is like going up head to head. Remember, in 2019, she lost Joe Biden in the debates. The first debate, she came out strong, essentially accused Joe Biden of being racist, but he was prepared this next time, and she couldn't answer questions when she was challenged. And we're never going to see that part. She's not going to hold press conferences. Why would she? She doesn't have to. I wouldn't do it. So I think the only chance Trump has for breaking through is the debate. When people can see for themselves, Kamala Harris can say, I repudiate all my previous positions on crime, on fracking and so forth. No one holds her to account. And so it won't happen.
It's amazing, really. You think she's got her own Wilmington basement strategy, referring back to Joe Biden in 2020. She's, as you say, speaking to friendly audiences. She's not given an interview, certainly, to anybody who would ask a tough question. She may not do so, certainly through the convention and a week after next. So it's going to be interesting to watch. I want to thank Monet. Thank you, Colin. Thank you, Bill. And thank you all for listening. We're every day on Potomac Watch, and we hope you'll catch us tomorrow and every day. Thanks for listening.